right. Good evening, and welcome to the council meeting of October 25th, 2021. This meeting is being held in chambers, and we are observing COVID-19 protocols. You will note that members of council are seated at their carrels. Citizens are spaced around the room to ensure 6 feet separation. Citizens must remain in their seats unless departing the chamber or rising to speak, and must wear their mask at all times while in the chamber. The meeting is being live streamed on Facebook Live. The most up-to-date meeting package is on Town of Kenfl website. The public may send questions directly to the recording secretary's email at jwest@kenfl.ca. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode. We should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. This council, through policy, has adopted Robert's Rules as our rules of order, our parliamentary procedure, and as the chair of the meeting, it is my responsibility to use those orders to ensure we get the business of the town done. I would ask councillors to please put away your phones for the remainder of the meeting. We will be voting by electronic means for all votes except administrative. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences?
Yes, Mayor Snow, I have a conflict with...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a conflict with 4A.
Thank you. That
Unless
is
they
noticed.
want the developer to speak, I'm available, I guess.
That's-
Otherwise, I'll recuse myself.
Thank you. CAO Troke, could you please take the roll call?
Mayor Snow, all of council is present and accounted for, so you have quorum this evening.
Excellent. Thank you, CAO. CAO, we have been provided with a proposed agenda. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, Mayor Snow, there's one more item we'll be adding to the agenda. We have a second property item for in camera this evening, so I'll be adding 9B, property matter.
Thank you. That's item 9B. Are there any further additions or deletions to the agenda? If I could have a motion to accept the addition. So moved. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor York, I've got you for the second. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. You have before you the minutes of September 27th, 2021 council meeting. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red, and the annotated minutes will be added to the electronic meeting file. I have one change on page 10 of 96, so it would be item B, councillors and mayor's reports. It says that in each case that I received the reports, but that should be that the deputy mayor received those reports. There's nothing further on that matter. All right, as we move on to our business arising, Councillor Zabian, you have declared a conflict of interest. If you could please step down from your chair. The time is 6:08. Thank you. CAO, you were directed at the October 12th CAC meeting to provide further information to council on this matter. Could you please take us through the update?
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a background, in which folks will find in the package, that on August 22nd of 2019, the town entered into a purchase and sale agreement with Mike's Clothing Limited, formerly known as the Robinson property on Main Street in Kenfl. The agreement was amended by counter offer on August 23rd. Since that time, there were a number of amendments have been made subsequent. So on August 28th of 2019, September 20th, 25th, and October 1st, and October 21st, all of 2019. Then in December of 2020 and in June of 2021. The purchase and sale had a buyback provision with clauses that specify the 15% completion date, which in this case was defined in the agreement as footers poured and then a final completion date. The 15% completion date was amended by the developer on June 30th of 2020, October 30th of 2020, and subsequently on May 31st of 2021 and September 30th of 2021. Final construction on the property was to be on or before March 31st of 2022 and was extended to June 30th of 2022. A footing permit was issued to the developer on August 17th of 2021. However, on September 30th of 2021, the footers were not poured for the proposed building. On October 5th, a letter was received by the CAO to the developer the CAO made a request to the developer asking for an update for council, a committee of council, which was slated for October 12th. On October 12th, the developer provided the CAO with documentation through letter from the mortgage group confirming the mortgage financing had been approved, and through a letter dated of October 8th from Roscoe Construction agreeing to the construction of the project. The Roscoe letter read a timeline as follows. Engineering work would begin immediately with trade packages available in February of 2022. Construction would begin in late 2022, and construction is expected to take 12 to 13 months, meaning a completion date of March or April of 2023. So for consideration this evening, the town of Kenfl consider extending the 15% completion date or footers, the final completion date for Mike's Clothing Limited. If council chooses to extend these dates, it's recommended that Mike's Clothing place the property deed in escrow with the town solicitor. Thus, if the completion dates were not achieved, the property would be bought back by the town as per the provisions in the buyback agreement. If an extension is granted, the new dates would be as follows. A 15% completion date of April 30th, 2022, and a final completion date of construction on April 30th, 2023. So I would point at this point, if council does not extend the 15% completion date, then I would say at this point it would be important for council to give direction to the CAO and to the town solicitor with next steps, particularly if they are wishing to exercise the buyback provision. In your package, there is a letter that is provided that has all of these dates in it. Included would be the language that would be needed if council considered extending the agreement.
Thank you very much for that update, CAO. And for the record, council was in receipt of 2 emails today from 2 different email addresses from Councillor Zabian, and in both there is discussion with regards to this project with which there is a declared conflict of interest, and that is simply for the record. Thank you. So we have a recommendation from the CAO that council approve the request from Mike's Clothing to amend the purchase and sale agreement to extend the 15% construction completion and building completion dates, and further, if contractual dates of this new amendment are not met, the CAO will immediately initiate buyback clause of the contract. If someone would, thank you, Councillor Maxwell, and this will get the discussion on the floor. And I need a seconder. Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the request from Mike's Clothing to amend the purchase and sale agreement to extend the 15% construction completion and building completion dates, and further, if contractual dates of this new amendment are not met, the CAO will immediately initiate the buyback clause of the contract. The floor is open for discussion. If there is no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption. Oh. Why can't I see that?
You want to write someone?
Okay, I've got you. There you go. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a little bit of clarification around the subsequent amendments. So when it says August 28th, 2019, then you say September 20th, 25th, October 1st, and October 21st, and December. Those are all in the 2020 year, correct?
So when we look at August 28th of 2019, September 20th, 25th, October 1st, and 21st, those are all in 2019?
All in 2019.
Right. And then we have one amendment in 2020 and one amendment in 2021.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, so when I look at this, I mean, obviously, there's been a number of extensions done for the property. And I think, you know, when it was obviously the council before that we approved this to move forward in 2019, I have to look at a number of things. You know, can the developer meet the timelines, meet the commitments? Can they execute on their respective promises? When I look at, to Councillor York's point in the last meeting when we talked about construction that's going on and that's happening all around us, it causes me some dismay and some trepidation when I'm thinking about moving forward with this particular developer. And in an area of business like this, I tend to place, you know, tremendous amount of reliance on the management of a project, and I have to have confidence that the developer will move forward in an efficient and effective way and meet timelines that are set out before them. And I haven't seen this. And I said at the last meeting of CAC that I was disappointed that we were in a position that we're in right now and having to make this decision. I always reflect back on the decision-making wheel when we talk about public opinion, when we talk about the economics of it and the property and what makes the most sense. And so that's where I'm at with this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. As I said at the CAC when this was brought up, basically, we've got a developer who's also a councillor who has done nothing to show that this land is going to be developed timely, let alone at all. The arguments that have been brought forward have been COVID, not a good atmosphere for building apartments. I've lived in the town 52 years and I've never seen so much development over the last 15 months. It was brought up by a councillor at the last meeting why we even have timelines. So I could think of three. So a developer doesn't sit on a piece of land or try to sell it. So a prime piece of town land doesn't sit in a state where it's not earning its potential in tax dollars. And in this particular case, so a lot which sat vacant, dormant, unsightly for a decade and a half, which the town taxpayers put a lot of money into buying it and tearing it down, and it's time for us to start recouping some of that money. I don't support another extension. The definition of insanity is doing something repeatedly and expecting a different outcome, right? Doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different outcome. We've been extending this since April or June of 2020. Yeah, and I'm done. I was done last time, but I'm done still. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. Councillor York.
I was going back through some of the dates of the meetings where I would have been a council member, and on October 30th of 2020, nearly a year ago, this council decided that we would offer one more extension with the caveat that would be the last extension. It subsequently wasn't the last extension, but it does need to be something that we take into consideration. We as a council decided a year ago that there were parameters in place that made us uncomfortable, and perhaps we need to look at those a little bit more closely. That we as a council have made that decision a year ago.
All right, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm listening to all the arguments and, you know, they make some good sense. But, you know, when we look at the developments around the town, we're looking at some pretty large companies that are involved and developers that are involved in these developments. And this one is a small developer, and one is a developer who has, I think, done the best that he could do at the time. This project, we had a small project in town that had no bearing on council whatsoever. And it was stopped and paused shortly after footings were dug, and has just recently been started again. As I said, the other two were very, very large companies with much more experience. To say that we've lost on this is not true. Taxes have been paid on this land ever since it was purchased. And we could go back and find out exactly how much money has been paid to the town in taxes. But I'm sure that there has been a fair amount, and we haven't lost anything. So, you know, I think, and I've heard from, you know, several citizens or, you know, in town that, you know, this is somebody that the people in Kenfl have faith in. And that they believe that this developer will do what they say they're going to do. They've shown us that the financing is in order, and they've shown us the company that's going to do their build for them, and they've given us the company has given us the dates. I don't know if we did a deep dive into the company to see if they were able to start this project any sooner than what they've said, but they have given us dates and times, so obviously this can get done, and I have faith that it will get done. And I have not lost my faith, and you know, I also have a problem with the fact that we have had extensions given to other groups. There was a long period with one development here in town where nothing was being done for quite a long time. Developer was not brought in here to answer for that, and just recently has begun to add on to what they were doing. So for me, I see no reason why we should stand in the way of this developer. And, you know, unless you want to give all development in this town to extremely large developers and shut out small independent businesses, then I think that we have to work with the people that we have. So that's how I feel.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Is there anything further? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you so much. I guess just one of the things that I want to look at when Councillor Maxwell had said about, you know, they're big companies. One of the things that I don't think it matters if you're a big company or a small company, the same rules apply. And I think that's what makes it even across the board. And how many extensions do you give developers, big or small? So I don't know what that number is, but I don't think it's about shutting out big developers or small developers. I think there's a protocol in place when you're building. All the same rules apply, and that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, thank you very much. At our last meeting, I mentioned that I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place, and I'm going to say that I still feel that. We were, I guess, mentored, taught that when we were looking at property, especially with people coming into our downtown, was, you know, did we believe that what they said is what they were going to do? Did we have the confidence and the desire to work with them, and was what they were going to do a fit for our downtown? And I have to say that I have wavered on those, the fit with the downtown. I guess this is probably third or fourth iteration of something. We still don't know what it looks like, but I have lost confidence. And I'm not sure that the developer will do what they say they will do based on the activity that we have seen over the last 2 years. Deputy Mayor, I see your light is on.
Thank you, Worship. You know, I think when we talk about other developers, and I think certainly every development is different, and some developers are, you know, they're at a standstill for different reasons. Maybe they've brought their plans into the planning department and they don't meet the proper setbacks, or perhaps their, you know, their engineering drawings aren't exactly to spec, or, but at least we see, in most cases, some sort of movement. But with respect to this property, we just don't see any. And obviously, when we're looking at, you know, a development in the downtown, we're looking at, you know, what it's going to do for our downtown, but we're also looking at the tax revenue that comes from a developed property, which is obviously far more. I think, and so that's where I'm at with it. I was going to get into a little bit more, dig a little bit more in terms of Roscoe and is it a fixed price contracts and things like that, but I don't think I need to go there at this point, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Your worship,
Yes, Solicitor?
head in the corner here. I don't want council to be misinformed, and some of the things the deputy mayor just said, I think aren't reflective of what's happened over the last number of months, and I think the CAO can speak to that. There has been, as I understand it, communication between the developer and your building officials. Now, that they don't work for the town, they don't work within the town of Kenfl, but I think the CAO may have some knowledge that he can speak to on that. And if you don't, Dan, perhaps I can share what I know, which is very much.
Sure, so I think I can try and touch on where the solicitor is talking. So I know that there was some back and forth between the developer and building officials with regards to footers and the soil, which, you know, I think a footer permit was issued and allowed to go forward. I think one of the things here is that from a perspective of your due diligence and your process in building, there seemed to be a few stops and starts once information was being communicated back and forth. So not that that's unusual and not that that wouldn't happen. I just think there was a period here where there was a lot of back and forth between the developer and the officials with the county with regards to the process to get to the type of footers and where the footers and so on were going to be located. Now, I'm kind of generalizing that conversation, but I think it was more of an attempt by the building official to communicate something of a technical nature, and I think being able to take that and then convert it into the types of plans that were there and the decisions were being made took a bit of time. So I think maybe that's as far as I would go on that conversation at this point.
Thank you, CAO. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to speak again?
Thank you, Worship. I will address Solicitor Matar through the chair, if that's okay.
Certainly.
So obviously, when we read the background here, there is a portion here that says the footing permit was issued on August the 17th. But then by that point, on September 30th, the footers were not poured for the proposed building, and the letter was sent out to Mike's Clothing on the 5th of October. So when I say there was no movement, obviously I realize that there was a footing permit issued on August the 17th, but I should have said no substantial movement was made on the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, everyone has had an opportunity to speak. Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the request from Mike's Clothing to amend the purchase and sale agreement to extend the 15% construction completion and building completion dates, and further, if contractual dates of this new amendment are not met, the CAO will immediately initiate the buyback clause of the contract. Voting is now open.
Before I vote, may I ask something?
Sure, sure.
I apologize.
Oh, let me turn your mic on. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could you just clarify what you just said in the question for me, so I'm exactly clear of what I vote for.
Okay, so do you wish to give the developer another extension?
Okay.
And as the CAO wrote in his note to us, he stated that if we decided to give an extension, then what we would request is that the deed be placed in escrow, so that if things didn't work out, we would have the deed and immediately be able to start that action. So you are voting to extend is what a yes means.
Okay.
A no means is that we are not extending.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Voting is now open. And you can change your vote right up to the point that I say that the voting is closed. And voting is closed. And the motion is defeated. So that brings us to a recommendation. The motion to amend the purchase and sale agreement was defeated, so this action triggers the buyback clause in the purchase and sale agreement. So the motion is that council direct the CAO and solicitor to immediately initiate the buyback clause of the contract. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Gerard and Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council direct the CAO and solicitor to immediately initiate the buyback clause of the contract. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to direct the CAO and solicitor to immediately initiate the buyback clause of the contract. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. CAO, do you need anything further from us?
Nope, I'll work with the solicitor.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Zabian, you can take your seat. It is now 6:32. All right, moving on to our next piece of business is the COVID-19 Council Safety Policy. CAO Troke, you have provided council with the opportunity to review the staff policy for COVID-19 at the October 12th CAC meeting. And at CAC, we requested that you draft a council policy for our review. We now have that council policy, and we have the opportunity to either pass it this evening, or if you wish to take it home for homework, to review it further. What is the will of council? Take it home for homework? All right,
Dr. Mayorson?
yes, please.
Just add to this, so we were able to be in communication with the provincial coordinator for the rapid tests. And so we needed to put forward a staff member to have training before we would be allowed to receive these tests from the province. So Director Bedingfield today went through training on the rapid testing, and we placed a sufficient order so that we would be able to be testing any staff member who would wish, whether you are vaccinated or not, twice a week for a 5-week period. So it will take 2 weeks for that to come in. So by the time we would come back to the COC, we would have the rapid tests available. So I just thought I'd give a quick update.
All right, thank you very much on that. So your homework is, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Just wanted to point out that there is a typo in the first paragraph, the last sentence. And Yale, I don't think is the correct word, it's probably take. And I think if we're doing homework, that maybe we should look at what some of the other elected officials are doing across the country. And I think the federal government for sure has said to be in the chamber, they have to be vaccinated. And I think that as elected officials, we should be taking a much stronger stance than everybody else. And we should be saying, if we're going to be sitting in here with each other, that we should be vaccinated. And if we're not, there are other ways that we can meet. You can come in via Zoom or via telephone. But I think that we need to set an example, and I think that's something that we should be looking at as a council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gerard?
Thank you, Worship. So Councillor Maxwell's comment makes me think of one thing. If we don't trust the vaccines, why isn't it mandated that if non-vaccinated vaccinated people have to test twice, vaccinated people should have to test twice? And the other thing I wanted to mention, and it hasn't become a factor yet, at least not in Canada, but what's going to happen when the government starts suggesting all these boosters? How is that going to affect this policy, or do we even want to bring that into this policy right now?
So at this point, this policy is only in effect during the state of emergency. So if there was a continuation, obviously this policy would continue or might need to be amended. But if this policy, if the state of emergency lapsed, and this policy would become void, then council at that time would want to consider whatever they would want that policy to be at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabian?
Thank you. Just wondering why we're taking this home. We've had this for a few days to review, so why are we pushing it off now 2 more weeks to, we've had time to review it. We received it on Friday, not today.
Right,
Yeah.
right. No, yeah, that's what I asked.
Yeah.
What was the
Okay.
will of council?
Should we take a vote of that, all of us then on that, rather than?
When conversation
Okay.
is complete. Thank you.
I just, before I sign off, I think it's great. I think there's provisions there on council too, and I think it's worded well, and I don't have any problem with it, so, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you. I'd just like to say that there is faith in the vaccine worldwide, and the only problem with the vaccine is that yes, you may still come down with COVID, but one good thing is you're not likely to land in hospital, and that is why we are taking precautions, and that is why people are encouraged to be vaccinated, because if we don't, then we're putting a strain on our healthcare system, and our healthcare system can easily become overwhelmed, like we see happening in other provinces. And so this is not something that I think that, we need to move into, debate on whether the vaccine is effective or not. It's obviously effective, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. And so I think we need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, by show of hands, who would like to make a motion this evening to move forward with this policy? 3? All right. The policy goes for homework, and your homework will be due on November 29th. And if you have any changes that you wish to make, other than Councillor Maxwell's already picked up on the typo, if there's any other changes, please have them to Jennifer by Wednesday before our council meeting. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So for example, with Councillor Maxwell's addition, is that a formal addition?
No, just her typo.
It was, I said a typo. I made a recommendation that we think about.
So is the idea for you to submit that recommendation?
I think we're taking it home for homework, and if I want to make a recommendation, I'll bring it back at that time.
Exactly.
At the next
Yes,
meeting? Okay,
yes.
just so I'm clear.
Yeah, so the only thing that has been captured this evening
Is the typo.
is the typo.
Okay, gotcha.
Otherwise, any recommendation that you wish to make, have it into Jennifer by Wednesday before council meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next piece of Councillor Zabian?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Just, I guess a comment. The decision's been made, but I mean, that's a month away. And we're
Yes?
kind of putting people maybe at risk in the building if, and I don't know
No,
which
we're
councillors.
not putting anybody at
Well, the
risk.
policy's not in place, so in a way we kind of are, because It's really in place for the staff that work here, and if I don't know which one of you are vaccinated and which ones of you aren't, but I mean, that could put them at risk for a month. Why would we want to do that when the policy's written up? I guess that alarms me that we're gonna wait a month now. I'm sure you can see what I'm saying. One of us, this is hypothetically, we're not allowed to pinpoint, but if one of us wasn't vaccinated, you're taking another month now that it could potentially enter this building to the staff, and I don't think that's fair. I think CEO Troke has written this up quite well, and I think I just want to make that comment, and
Thank you. Councillor York?
This is the council policy, correct? There is a
That's
staff policy in place already?
That's correct.
So if there was somebody coming in from the public, us included, would be wearing a mask at that point?
That's correct.
Correct, so staff are protected from them? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. This is ours specific.
Okay.
And it's for chamber, yes. All right, moving on to our next piece of business. Councillor Zabian, you have provided council with a request for decision to hold a public forum for council and public without a moderator. Do you wish to speak further on this matter?
yes, thank you, Mayor Snow. I went back and looked, and I couldn't find the exact date. I think it was in 2015, as I'd said before, that there was a public forum in this room. Again, the format, I don't feel that we need a moderator. I think that kind of censors what people are allowed to say, and I think people should be able to come in freely and speak. I get there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, but we're going to take that home with us like everything else and put it together and try to do better for the town. So I'm very hopeful that the rest of council will support this, and definitely will be a work towards transparency and good relations with our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zabian. So your RFD is that council approve the request to hold a public forum as presented, and are you prepared to move that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the seconder? Councillor Maxwell, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded that council approve the request to hold a public forum as presented. Discussion? We also have a note here from the CAO, so we'll start with Councillor Huntley and then move to the CAO, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like the idea of a forum, for sure, but I always think that it's like a big meeting. You need somebody to lead it. It gives equal time for everybody to speak, and it keeps order in a room, because without a moderator, for example, it could go on all night, because, you know, we all like to chat, and we don't get together very often, so I'm sure it'll be a nice evening. But I really think there should be a moderator with some sort of goal.
Thank you. CEO Troke, did you want to speak to the document that you provided us with?
Sure, and thank you. So just at the last committee of council, I had been asked by council to look at some of the types of engagement that had been done here in the town previously. And so if you look at the third paragraph, you'll see I referenced the fact that the accessibility plan, active transportation, and the community rebranding were done as public consultations, and these were a series of planned engagements with specific outcomes. I also wanted to mention that there were certainly examples, and while I would say these are two that in discussing with staff, there was with regards to a motel property, also with regards to Webster Street. One of the pieces, though, in my discussing with other municipal units, I did reference the fact that HRM does an annual consultation, and it has to do with their budget process. So effectively, staff, several months before the budget would be due, would put information out into the public, which would allow for public feedback. Now, the last 2 years, because of COVID, these obviously were online, but they received several thousand responses to these. So there's many ways in which you can hold a session, collect the information, and these can even be done on an annual basis if you want to tag them specifically to whether it's strategic planning, a budget process. I'm happy to go out and have a deeper dive on any of those if council wishes me to do so. And I would just say that overwhelmingly in my discussions, typically these are usually driven by a desire to have a specific outcome more than kind of general conversation. But also all of these have different ways and different looks that are usually driven by a moderator of some kind. So the note is there with the information. I'm happily to do a deeper dive if folks want me to follow up.
Thank you, CAO. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So when I read the background here from Councillor Zabian, and in particular, I'm not requesting a moderator, and that the public should be able to speak freely with any comments and concerns. And also further, that he is not looking for a strategy session format. So when I looked back at CAO Troke's sort of synopsis of the work that he had done to come back to us with, and what a public input session would look like, I sort of reflected back on some of the public meetings that we've had, and there's always been a view to connect something germane to the citizens within the town. And I'm certainly all for hearing for ideas from citizen input, but with some sort of an agenda in mind, with some sort of an outcome in mind. I thought about it was a survey that was done, and it was probably done 3 or 4 years ago, and the name of the company escapes me right now, but it was something that was situated around the budget. And we put it forward to the citizens of Kenfl, and we talked about what our budget comprised of, how we spent the money, how much was for policing, how much was for admin, and then they came back with, and you probably remember this, Jillian, because I think it was during your time, and they came back with some ideas. Now, I don't know that we got a great representation. I think it was only like maybe 9 or 35. So it wasn't very many, but nevertheless, it was something that we put forward to the citizens of the town, and for their consideration and for feedback from them. So I think as long as there's something that we can bring to the citizens and they can bring back their ideas to us, I think it's something that has to be germane to all of them. I looked in our policy G64, section 5, that talks about public meetings, and there's a small section in there about ad hoc meetings, but it doesn't really talk about these public type of meetings. So that may be something that we want to create or add or do an addendum to that policy around how we would handle these types of public meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. When we have these public meetings, I think it's crucial that we are able to be as accessible as possible. So having it in a building that's off-site from Town Hall, I think makes it more accessible in the first place, but also offering a hybrid system for how people can interact. So being able to physically attend a meeting is often difficult for a lot of people for various reasons. So if we are able to also have an online forum as well, so that people can engage if they're not otherwise able to come to the physical location. So I would want to ensure that when we have these meetings, that they become as accessible as possible. So whether they're held over 2 time slots, or if they're held, well, I would suggest that regardless of when they're held, they would also have an online component as well. And that's my 2 cents at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Like Deputy Mayor Savage, I agree. I think we need a moderator. You know, I don't think anyone's not going to be heard if we have a moderator, but you basically, you need someone to hand around the microphone and run the show, and, you know, give some sort of guideline as to, you can't all just run up the front of the room and start talking. I also think there should be a list of topics maybe that, you know, people are concerned about. I don't think just to have a free-for-all on anything that anybody wants to bring up, or maybe we have a free-for-all, but we still have a list of topics that, you know, maybe some of us are concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So I guess 2 points to Deputy Mayor's comments. You're comfortable having a public forum when the
Councillor, please.
Yes.
You don't speak to the other councils.
I'm speaking to her comment,
Okay.
which other people have done in meetings as well. I've
Okay.
watched, I guess, Mayor Snow, but I'm not able to speak now, I guess. Again, here we go to the public. I'm allowed to speak when I'm allowed to, and
Councillor.
you know what? This is a personal problem with you, and I'm not sure.
Counselor,
No, it's unfortunate. I am gonna speak though, because it's my turn, like everyone else had a chance. To Deputy Mayor's point, I guess there's a comfortability there if you're comfortable with the topic. But if you don't, I guess you're uncomfortable if there's gonna be discussion there that perhaps you don't wanna hear. And I have a problem with that because there's nothing I wouldn't wanna hear from the citizens. I'm not gonna have all the answers, but that's why we're elected officials. And if you can't sit there and take the good, the bad, and the ugly, then that's a problem for all of us in this room. And it's also a problem in this room when you're not allowed to freely speak. Thank you.
Counselor Maxwell?
Thank you. I do think we need somebody to operate the microphone, so if we want to call that a moderator, then we can call that a moderator. I don't see this as something where we would be responding as individual counselors or as a council. It would be a listening session for us. And if we need a couple of starter questions, like how are we doing? What would you like us to do differently? What would you like to see done in the town that we haven't, you don't see us working on? A few of those types of questions. Will we get some negative stuff? Of course. We can't please everybody all the time. That's impossible to do. So yes, we'll get some negative, and we have to. I always used to say, when somebody's giving you negative feedback, then you listen to it and you take the good out of it, and what can you do to improve or make that a better situation for that person. So yeah, I'm not afraid to sit up in front of our citizens at all, and if there's criticism, then I'm more than willing to listen to the criticism. And, I can only get better by listening to it. So, yeah, we could have a few extra starter questions, maybe, general, very general, and somebody to control the microphone. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think, obviously, the members of the public, citizens of Kenfl, can speak to any one of us at any given time. They can call us, they can email us, and I'm sure I speak for the rest of council in that we receive phone calls and emails quite frequently about a whole variety of topics. I think to bring the citizens of Kenfl into a room with a moderator, but with absolutely no agenda, no topics, no suggestions. I guess, what are we looking for? Like, it's so vast that I don't even know where it would start. I've never seen a meeting of this type before. And I actually, during the last couple of weeks that we've had time to know about this and think about this and know that the request for decision was coming back to council this evening, I've spoken to some other municipalities and I've put the question forward. I've said, public meetings, absolutely, we're all for them, but we have a moderator and we have topics. We have some sort of an agenda that guides the discussion. It just, to me, it just makes good sense. Now, that's not to say that other topics won't come up and public comments can be made, and that's what we hear, and that's what we're here to listen to, and that's democracy. So I'm all in favor of that at any time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor York?
Thank you. Again, it goes back to my previous point, I guess, that if we do have a hybrid system where we have online engagement as well as in-person engagement, we're going to need a moderator, I suppose, to be able to field the questions from online or at least get them in a queue. But I would make the recommendation that the moderator is a third party, so not staff, just because I think that would be wise. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Zabian, this is your RFD, and you have heard from members of council with several recommendations. Do you wish to change the methodology, the description that you have put down here?
Thank you. I don't mind somebody obviously handing a mic and saying you have 2 minutes to speak. I don't want it set up like, I don't know how many of you may have attended the Webster Street one where it was in groups and people really couldn't speak freely. It was more questions of what you want and what you don't want. So I want people to be able to freely speak for a minute or two on whatever. I don't want it germane to a subject. So it's open, obviously, but you do need someone, I guess, to facilitate it, and that's where I am. And in fact, the one that was held in chamber here, Mayor Snow, you attended too. Because I remember I had never met you before, and you were sitting right there in the galley there, and you stood up and conversated as well with the former council at that time. So I think it was a great learning night, and I enjoyed it. So thank you.
All right, Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Just to Councillor Zabian's last point under background, where it says no reason send us back to staff, I've laid out the particulars. Is there, what are the particulars, I guess?
Thank you.
Oh, no. So Councillor Gerard, it would be that, as the councillor just said, that he's not requesting a moderator, but he's now said that he would have a moderator, but that we still speak freely, that there's not an agenda or topics. So that's,
Okay,
that's
thank
the
you.
criteria that we've established at this point,
Thank you.
based on what everybody has said. Councillor York.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the Webster Street Revitalization Community Meeting, I was staff at the time, and the stations were helpful because we were able to capture the information that came back from the citizens. So if we are to have a meeting like this, it's wonderful to be able to sit and to listen, but it is perhaps more impactful if we're able to take something back after the fact. So that Webster Street meeting allowed staff at the time, to capture the sentiments of what people were saying in those small groups, and to capture the concerns and the questions and the queries and bring it back and make action items out of it. So if we do have a meeting like this, I would hope, and I would expect that citizens would hope as well, that we have an action item at the end of it. So it's one thing to sit and listen, but if we don't do anything with what we have heard, then it's a waste of time for everybody involved. So I think if we do make an action item out of what we hear, then I think it would be of benefit to the people who've taken the time to come and let us know what they want us to know, good, bad, and ugly.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So just so I'm clear, it would be a public meeting. There would be a moderator, because that's the change to it. People would come in, citizens would come in, and there would be absolutely no guidance for them whatsoever. They would just be asked to speak on whatever they wish to speak about.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I think that we would probably take notes during this session, or at least I probably would. I'm sure that my colleagues probably would as well. And I think when this originally came up, that this was going to perhaps lead into our strategic planning session. So we may not have an outcome that particular night, but we would take the feedback that we got and implement it into the strategic planning session. So that's kind of what I was thinking. And like I said, we could say, a few generic questions, like how is your council performing? What changes would you like to see in the town over the next 3 years? Something like that. So there was a bit of a direction, and then people would come up and just talk to whichever question they wanted to talk to. I think that's kind of the way I envision it. And we would be there, we would listen, and we would take notes. And if we needed our number one note taker there to do a better job, then maybe we could have our number one note taker there. So that's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
So again, I'm going back to the RFD where it says, just to be clear, I'm not looking for a strategy session format. So to what Councillor Maxwell just said, in terms of some suggested topics or some suggested questions, if that was part of it, then that is a different decision for me to make. But if it's not part of it, then it's a different decision for me to make.
That's correct. That's correct.
So it is not part of it. Or
Right now, when I queried the Councillor Zabian, a moderator, but no topics. But we've heard from 3 people since that time, so I'm going to query him again. Councillor Maxwell, I do see your light, but I'm going to go back to the author and see where we are landing. So Councillor Zabian, you have said a moderator, but you've heard from several of your colleagues, and they're all looking for topics or questions. Are you willing to go that way, or do you still wish to have no topics?
No, I don't think we need to have topics. I think, again, you're then selecting who's gonna speak and who's gonna come and who may be interested in it, and I don't think that's fair. You know, I think every municipal unit across should do this annually, and just, it's a good way to hear from people, and like Councillor York said, if it's done, I guess, electronically or online as well, that's great too. You're catching everybody, and it's just, it's a nice open format, and I don't think we need to make it germane to certain subjects. I think that's what's been done in the past, and I mean, it's great if you're trying to make a decision about something, but I think this is just a session to hear from your citizens, and as I think Deputy Mayor mentioned last 2 weeks ago, it's great for the strategic planning, and yeah, I want to hear from people. I want to engage the public, so if this works, then I think it's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, we now have a moderator, so that is different from the RFD that you have, but there are still no topics and no questions. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask, and maybe Jeff doesn't even want to get involved, but is there having one of these sort of open house, town hall type meetings, is there anything that you would suggest, or like I said, if you don't want to comment at all, I understand that too.
There's some, it's whatever you want it to be. From a legal perspective, you can look at it, I've heard all the comments, you can look at it like the session you have at the end of your meetings, except that you're able to let it go on longer. So it's just whatever format you want it to be, but it could simply be as Councillor Zabian has suggested. It could be everybody has 2 minutes at the mic or whatever the rules are going to be, and they can speak to whatever. It's, I suspect, in that sort of format, it's like has been described. It's not a question and answer session. It's I'm a resident of the town of Kenfl or a taxpayer in the town of Kenfl, and this is what I want to share with you. And at the end of the night, you've heard everybody, and you go home, and or as others have suggested, you put more rules around it to try to influence the nature of the discussion. They're just 2 very different ways of gathering input.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor and Councillor Maxwell, I see that you're both looking to speak again. You've both spoken 3 times. I'm going to defer now to Councillor Huntley, who has not spoken more than once. Go ahead,
Thank you
please.
so much. Love the idea of a forum. I'm great with a moderator. I do like topics, and they can be very general. It could be, here are the things that you might want to look at tonight, because what it does, it makes people comfortable when they walk into a room, because maybe they're not great in speaking in crowds, so it gives them a little focus on, oh yeah, oh, that's an easy one, I can ask that without feeling silly, and it makes it more comfortable for the people who are visiting, and then that can create a conversation. They're just guides, that's all. It's something else. We could be talking about financials, and then infrastructure will come up, and then they'll go, oh yeah, you know where I live, and then there'll be a different conversation. I think it's just a lead-in that is comfortable for them.
Thank you. All right, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Can I direct a question to CAO Troke?
Certainly.
So CAO Troke, just in the work that you did on this, have you come up with any other, or come in contact with any other municipality or unit that does an open meeting like this without any topic, without any agenda, without anything? And if you have, I just like to know more.
So through the mayor, so no. And principally though, in my discussions with other municipal units, there seemed to be overwhelmingly that counselors talk to the public every day. And so then I will say from a staffing perspective, because if you're trying to capture things and use them, we ended Committee of Council last with the idea that, this could be valuable for strategic planning session. And so, if these are the types of things that as staff creating reports and information for council, creating a structure with an outcome is very helpful, because then you have a sense of where you're trying to go with it. Not that things can't be said, not that, information can't be shared, but it tends to put you in a certain place where then you can write up a report and say this was the outcome of that meeting. So I guess to your question, I didn't come across that. Not that I suppose if I explored more, I might not. But in my conversation with most of the other municipal units, typically most councillors are in a feedback loop with folks regularly anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. It's been asked, has this kind of forum taken place anywhere else? And I'm thinking that it's very, very similar to the leaders' debates, or the federal leaders in particular, when I would watch them go into an open session, and the public could come to the microphone and ask basically any question that they wanted. There was no particular agenda, no particular questions that they had to ask. It was anybody could come up to the microphone and say, Prime Minister Trudeau, this is what I'm concerned about. Could you answer that question? So we're not going to be answering. We're going to be listening. So I think it's basically the same thing. Is that it's kind of an open mic, only it will be moderated, so you'll get so much time. And they can say whatever they want, and we listen. So I think it's very similar to that style. And again, it's not something that I have a problem with. Listening is not something that I have a problem with. I don't really need to give them any questions. If they want to come and just say what's on their mind, they can come and say what's on their mind, and I'm willing to listen to them. Just the same as those federal leader open houses or whatever they were called. So I think we all watched at least one of those.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I'm just listening, and I'm sensing that there's a fear of what people may or may not say, and I go back to that again. I mean, we're elected officials, so we have to take the grunt of everything. So I'm not understanding why it has to be, why people are looking for it to be germane to something, or to put little suggestion boxes up on what they can talk about. I think people should be able to freely speak. I mean, they pay their taxes. They have every right to talk to us, whether they email, call us, or come to this forum. So I think by not doing it this way, I think you're almost saying, well, we want to hear this, but we don't want to hear that. And personally, I can only speak for myself. Like I said, I have no fear in anybody talking, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that they couldn't approach us in any format. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. And just in response to, through the chair, in response to Councillor Zabian, I have no fear of anything anybody wants to say. Everybody, my phone number, my email is on the, I could understand the suggestion of this meeting if we were inundated with problematic emails, or Dan constantly fielding phone calls from unhappy citizens saying, why is this going on? Why is that going on? I don't see that. Like I said, I'm not against having a meeting like this, but I am fully accessible all the time to any citizen in Kenfl that wants to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to make a comment around when we're debating around this horseshoe, and I do believe when we're debating and we're discussing, and good discussions and good debates creates good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. The other week, I was walking on the trail and I was sworn at, and it was quite scary, and I was approached in a very aggressive way. So if we are going to be having these open houses, and I think there's a lot of value there, I would like to see some parameter for how people can engage. I'm not trying to stifle how people speak or voice their concerns, but there needs to be a bit of decorum. And I don't want my safety to be compromised because we're in an open house forum. I don't think, by and large, the citizens of Kenfl would ever come out and speak like that in a public setting. However, it did happen and it was frightening, and I would like to just make sure that people around this horseshoe, as well as people in the room and online, are feeling comfortable when they engage. So as long as there are not parameters about what they say, but in terms of topic and questioning, but rather how we are all addressed and how we are treated, and other people in the room is my only caveat. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Xavier, I will address you one more time. Moderator, but no topics, or?
No topics.
No topics. So everyone has had more than one opportunity to speak on this matter. And I believe that we are prepared for the question. And the question is on adoption of the motion to approve the request to hold a public forum with a moderator, but no topics. So that is what you are voting for. It doesn't mean that we can't have a public forum, but this is what you're voting on at this time, is a public forum with a moderator and no topics. Voting is now open.
Oh, sorry.
Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. CAO Troke, can we leave that for you to determine a date? I suspect probably a doodle poll. Most of us have probably already got stuff in our calendars for the month of November, and this RFD does speak to November. Getting us into December kind of makes it a little crunchy, but perhaps there's some availability there.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, Councillor Zabian, we have another request for decision from you to discuss allegations from staff to council. And as previously stated by the CAO, there are no allegations from staff. And if there were allegations, they would be an operational human resource matter, which would be dealt with by the CAO. The request to have a discussion on a confidential letter making allegations has been defeated twice in this chamber. And unless one of the members of council who voted against the motion is willing to change their vote and move this, the matter will not be reconsidered. CAO Troke, did you have anything to add?
Just that in your package, there was a very short backgrounder that I put together, and with regards to the process, so in this case here, in order to entertain the request, either Councillor Gerard, Councillor Huntley, Deputy Mayor Savage, or Mayor Snow would have to consider changing their previous vote if it was going to be reconsidered.
Thank you. Are one of those four individuals prepared to make a motion to discuss this matter? All right, then your request for decision has failed. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to recommendations and reports. Deputy Mayor, the floor is yours. Let me turn on your mic, please.
Thank you, Worship. The first report and recommendation for CAC is the appointment of citizen members to Kenfl Inclusion and Access Advisory Committee. So the recommendation is that CAC recommends to Town Council appointment of the citizens to the Kenfl Inclusion and Access Advisory Committee. Bernie Zink, Laurel Taylor, Spencer Lang, Yuning Pan, and Gerald McPherson. I so move.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the appointment of the following members: Bernie Zink, Laurel Taylor, Spencer Lang, Yuning Pang, and Gerald McPherson to the Kenfl Inclusion and Access Advisory Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no, Deputy Mayor, did I?
Oh,
No, that's me, never
yeah,
mind.
no, yeah.
Sorry. Just getting used to using our mics again. Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the appointment of the following members: Bernie Zink, Laurel Taylor, Spencer Lang, Yuning Pang, and Gerald McPherson to the Kenfl Inclusion and Access Advisory Committee. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you.
The second report, recommendation in a report, is the COVID-19 decision-making protocol. The recommendation is that CAC recommends rescinding the March 2020 COVID-19 decision-making protocol based on the ministerial order. It is recommended that council rescind that protocol and adopt current policy practices for meetings. I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council rescind the March 2020 COVID-19 decision-making protocol based on the ministerial order and adopt current meeting policy practices for meetings. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to rescind the March 2020 COVID-19 decision-making protocol based on the ministerial order and adopt current meeting policy practices for meetings. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we will move on to our reports, and council and mayor reports will be received as presented. So Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Last council was September 27th. Last CAC was October the 12th. There is a Valley Waste, October the 20th. There's a new operations manager, Dennis Fury. I sat down after our meeting this week and had a chat with him. Seems very eager and capable. Over the last year, Ken Redden, the former operations manager, has made great strides in cleaning up the yard and hence making the outdoor operations more efficient. The budget is on par at plus or minus 50%. The transfer station floor needs to be replaced. That's about 20 years old, and for the tonnage that goes through there now compared to 20 plus years ago, yeah, they probably soon need a bigger building. They also need a new compactor. So these are pretty big capital investments. September 24th, the Kenfl Police Commission, we had discussions about parking, crosswalks, the planters, town hall meeting for the Kenfl Police Service and the board. As of the meeting date, we were 42% on budget. We discussed, so we didn't, I guess there has been discussion about this, and this is something more that Dan and I have to talk about. But there's a line item that really all the items in the budget, they've all got a spot where they should be. So again, that's for Dan and maybe the board to discuss. We are up to date on vehicle maintenance. However, we do have a car on order, and because of industry delays, The maintenance on that vehicle is over budget. And new projects, Tim Mills, who is I think I've got this right, ex-RCMP, has been tasked with doing training for the boards province-wide through the DOJ. And I'm still waiting to hear back from David Walker in Bridgewater, but we're trying to coordinate a one trip for Tim where Annapolis, Kenfl, and Bridgewater can all meet here in Kentville, and he can do board training for all boards. Yeah, that is my report. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the residents of Kenfl, this small report is just a piece of what I have done for work for you in the month of October. October 4th, I attended the Diversity Committee, and there was a guest speaker there for they called it the AM Project. The gentleman's name was Ryan Massa, and the idea that he brought to the committee was to transform a community space, which was a retail space, into a safe and developmental area for young persons aged 8 to 16 with access to career guidance, online resources, training, etc. The Bayville community that he was telling us about is part of Barbados, and there's a lot of challenges in that community, and one of the challenges right now is in the education system where students really need access to laptops. Teachers don't have anything to, help teach and so the students can learn. So what he was asking for is communities to pass it around to municipalities. There might be many people in the community that they have old laptops, and what he does, there could be a gathering point, and then he takes them all and ships them all. There's no cost. He carries all that. And I guess it's really starting to help give purpose to the youth over there, because he spoke about if there was no promise of anything like that, there's a lot of trouble that the kids never really get out of. They see a spark and it doesn't continue, and then they fall right back into the same. So it was an awesome piece to listen to. We also talked about moving toward equity and diversity, and a strategy for belonging was updated. They talked a lot about the 5 pillars: the equity, inclusion, diversity, justice, and belonging. With Kings Point to Foyne, we had a financial review, July, August, September. We discussed a new business hiring committee for, they're looking for a new manager, but Faye Brown is staying there until somebody new is being hired. Excuse me. And we also talked about November 4th, a meeting they're doing up a new business plan, and they're getting help from Acadia Entrepreneurship Center. So that'll be lots of learning there for sure. And the Valley Wren Liaison and Oversight on October 20th discussed strategic and business plans, key issues from the region, election of chairs, business plan facilitation session, which is coming up November 4th. And they talked a lot about topics, housing, economic growth. It's fascinating, really. I really loved that discussion, and there was a lot of brilliant minds sitting around that table. But it was nice to see that they took on the topic of housing, because it's not just about housing, right? It's about employment, it's about mental health, it's about economic growth, businesses coming in, so it's a bigger picture, which I think they need to be involved in. And the Kenfl events, the grand opening of the new facility to the portal, which is a much needed for youth at risk homeless home. It was visited by invited guests, representatives from government, and outreach workers. What a beautiful home they have created, and one of the people who are staying there said they felt love in that home. So it was, when it comes from them, you've done a good job. So congratulations to Russ and all the crew there. And Lions Breakfast, the monthly connecting. It's a great breakfast to go to, but it's a great time to meet with other community groups. So been trying to, rent a table and invite groups, and they get to meet each other, because a lot of times everybody's so busy working that you really don't get a chance to meet anybody Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 or whatever it is. So I think they've been really enjoying it, and they're taking pictures with each other and swapping business cards, so it's been good. And last but not least, few of the miscellaneous events. October 4th, meeting with the youth liaison at Nova Scotia Works to see what they have in the works, a gentleman by name of Steve Johnson. The 6th, I met with the mayor. The 8th, I met with the police chief. I just really wanted to find out what he was about and what he had hoped for the town of Kenfl. And see, actually, it was nice to see we're all on the same page. October 13th, I had a tour of the Valley Community Learning Center on Oakdean Avenue. Wow. Okay. I was kind of jealous to see all that vegetable garden and everything they had, and it was amazing to see that used to be a parking lot. And I instantly fell at peace when I went there. So it's an absolute beautiful job that they've done. So congrats. I did a webinar on from the World Federalist Movement, Better Climate Governance. Sometimes you wonder, how come we're no further ahead on climate? Well, I can understand why when I listen to that, because there's a room of like 5,000 people, and they all want a goal, and you know, you have 5 discussions on one thing, and it's still only 2 o'clock and you're no further ahead, but they have some great ideas. And last but not least, the Historical Society had a volunteer appreciation on a Saturday. My gosh, that was so nice. Just to thank the volunteers for their work and interest in helping. I'd like to thank them for making us feel like we belong and for making the gathering so enjoyable. What a wonderful group of volunteers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Let's see. I've attended the last council meeting, and I've also attended the last council advisory committee meeting. On September 15th, I attended the public hearing for the MPS LUB, which was to hear the public comments on allowing C1 use in the C2 zone. September 20th, grants to organization sessions. This was our annual meeting to give our grants out to local groups within the area. September 30th, I attended the Healing Circle event for Truth and Reconciliation Day, a fantastic event. It was well attended. There was lots of learning taking place there, and I think the organizers did a superb job with this. It was a really great event. October 2nd was the Harvest Festival. I attended that, another fantastic event. The weather was cooperative. Many people turned out to take part in the many activities, and I couldn't name all the activities that were going on in Centre Square. There were just so many of them. And kudos again to the Kenfl Recreation for this event. It was very well done. I went to the King's Historical Society Show and Shine. Wow, what an array of antique cars and trucks. It's amazing to go and see what's there. And of course, we have some people in town with antique cars and trucks that were also showing what they had as well. Great participation from both owners and observers. There were lots of people around taking pictures and looking at what was available. So another successful event by the King's Historical Society, and kudos to them for organizing such a wonderful event. And that is my report. My committees did not meet in the last month, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So same as the rest of the council, last council meeting attended in CAC. On October the 20th, the Investment Advisory Committee met, and we looked at our year-to-date performance summary, which is at 4.636%, which is benchmark against the money-weighted net against the balanced income benchmark of 2.13. So we're just north of 14 million in the perpetual fund effective October the 20th. The discussions continue with regard to the imminent changes set to come once we do receive the approval, the sign-off that we require from the minister on the revised investment policy statement, which will take us a little heavier into equities and a little bit further away from fixed income as per that was sent in. October the 20th was also KBC, where I attended their board meeting where we reviewed the financial report. There were various updates on promotions and events. They talked about the Great Pumpkin Palette, which is still in the works right now, so I'd encourage everybody who hasn't partook in that. There's lots of great places to go and lots of great food to try. Under the gazebo, they talked about how successful that has been. November the 19th is scheduled for the night shopping party, holidays. November the 3rd, and I know Lindsay has sent that out, that is the AGM for KBC, and they're encouraging all of council to attend if they are able to. One of the items that they brought up at the last board meeting was a comfort station, and this is top of mind again for KBC. And so we talked about some opportunities with this, perhaps through the Town of Kenfl accessibility plan, because it then comes into capital funding, et cetera. So it's on their radar again, and sort of looking for the Town of Kenfl for it to be on their radar as well. September the 23rd, we had an in-camera meeting, where council and CAO were in attendance. September the 23rd was Joint Fire Service Commission, where we reviewed the March 30th, 2021 financials for the Kenfl Volunteer Fire Department and discussed various CapEx and the sale of various pieces of equipment. September 23rd, I attended the AVCC Best, and it was a great evening out at the drive-in, well attended. September 30th was the Healing Circle, and I just made a note that it was a well-attended event, and it was an event really to talk and to listen and to heal, and it's a nice start to see. And then in October, there were various meetings I had with various residents there. And October the 7th, there was a lunch that I had with Lindsay and the KBC Chair and Executive Director to discuss the agreement that's been ratified by Council, in particular the core funding versus the special project funding. I just wanted to make one more addition to my report. Deborah Cole had sent out the Financial Condition Index report, and I was just going to touch on it very, very briefly, and I guess it would be under the auspice of the Audit Committee, which I sit on as well. And just I had mentioned about that at the last committee meeting, and so she sent this out to all of council, and I just want to make a couple comments about it. Just that the Financial Condition Index is the current municipal performance indicator program for the Nova Scotia municipalities, and Deb makes note that in this constrained economic environment, municipalities are under a great deal of pressure to develop and report on benchmarks as tools of accountability. And obviously these performance indicators aren't looked at individually, but they're viewed as an entire grouping. And for March 31st, 2021, Municipal Affairs calculates an overall assessment for financial stability for the Town of Kenfl would be assessed at a low risk. So the overall financial conditions index assessment for the town is green, low risk, and that means although the town has a few challenges, it is considered low risk for financial stability. And I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor York.
Thank you, Worship. Like most people, it's been a bit of a light month in terms of committee meetings, but I have been able to attend at the Regional Recreation Facility. The RFP has been awarded to the Sierra Group, so we've met as a board, or as a group rather, to discuss the current needs and the current assets in the region. And then specifically, the Town of Kenfl met with the Sierra Group with CAO in attendance, as well as Director Bedingfield and our facilities manager, Kevin Bennett, to discuss the specific needs and assets of Kenfl, and just do a bit of a deeper dive into the Town of Kenfl. I attended the KCA PTA last week, where we got an update on the outdoor classroom and the progress that's been making. That was done through some grants from the province, and it looks spectacular, and children have been able to read and do some classroom work out there. Obviously that'll pick up in the spring when the weather is a little bit nicer, but we've had a beautiful October, so it has been used since its completion. There's also been an update on the school garden. So we are now working with a couple of groups, including the Blomidon Naturalist Society, and they're going to be working with the school to create gardens that are native to Nova Scotia, so that the plants will be blooming, and there should be blooms, from our understanding, all throughout the year. So they are doing some really interesting work with the students, and they're going to be part of that as well. So the students will be able to dig up and participate, but then also have the learning opportunity with the Blomidon Naturalist Society. So I've attended the same events that everybody has spoken to already, and they've been wonderful. My children had a wonderful time at the Harvest Festival. I didn't think my children would enjoy rock climbing as much as they did, so I thank the Parks and Rec Department for opening that door for them. Nowhere to do it in the valley at the moment, so we'll just have to rely on the Harvest Festival moving forward. I also did some training over the course of the month in improving employee experience in the municipal setting, and did some work with the KBC Events Committee. We met off and on throughout the month, so there wasn't one day in particular, but we talked a lot about KBC's events coming up and what we're going to be doing there. I've also been asked to participate in a national mentorship program as a mentor for women and young women specifically looking to enter political fields. So I will be representing the municipal government, but it's representative of all three tiers of government, so I'm honored to be able to take part in something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. I attended the same meetings that all of you did. On October 20th, I met with the Investment Advisory Committee. As for events, on September 30th, it was an honor to attend the Healing Circle, and I want to thank Director Bedingfield for putting that together. Carolyn Landry was a great speaker, and there was a really nice attendance from the public as well. On the 2nd of October, the Harvest Festival was great, so I got to thank that rec department again, and all of the town of Kenfl staff for working on that. And on the 9th, it was nice to see the car show that the King's Historical Society put together. Lots of people downtown and lots of great cars. It was in great attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. In my report, there is an error on my report. I was obviously trying to pad my report. The last council meeting that I attended was actually the 26th of July. I did not attend the 27th of September meeting as stated up there. I had regrets for that one. So it was the usual monthly meetings with the Valley Wren, the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipality Board, Municipal Finance Corp, lots of Valley REAP work. We had a workshop, and that's what took me away from the last meeting. We actually had an in-person workshop in Halifax, and it was 3 days, and it was a really good, very intense workshop. Met with the Quality of Life local leadership team, and Engage Nova Scotia continues to take the data that we have with regards to quality of life information that we gathered up 3 years ago, and they have new tools with which to manipulate that data with. I had a great conversation with our MLA, our new Minister of Municipal Affairs, John Lohr, with regards to agriculture and innovation in the Valley, and I was speaking to him more as his Farmer John role and as MLA role than as our new minister. So that was kind of a nice conversation. King's Remac, we're now official. The bylaws are out there to approve the formation of the King's Regional Emergency Management Organization, and everything has been forwarded to Municipal Affairs for approval. Also had the opportunity to chat with our MP, Cody Blois, again with regards to agricultural innovation in the Valley, and I went from that meeting to my car in a parking lot and had a conversation with Dr. Ranjana Sharma, Director of Research and Development at both Kenfl and St. John's Newfoundland Research Centers, and Dr. Mark Hodge up here at the Kenfl Research Station, again, agricultural innovation in the Valley. Town of Kenfl events, I participated in the Chrysalis House Rise and Run 5K, which is a really fun 5K if you ever get the opportunity. Well, you will get the opportunity again next September. They held off in 2020, but rose up and we ran in the rain on the 26th of September. And the really great part about this run is that you don't actually have to run. You don't have to go on the road because they take you down the trail. And the best part is that the medals are actually cookies. So I just want to say that having a cookie for breakfast is right up there with reading pumpkin books to grade 3 students at KCA. I attended the Truth and Reconciliation Healing Circle. The day could not have been more beautiful, and as Carolyn came onto the soccer field, an eagle flew by, and as you know, in Mi'kmaq legend, eagles mean love, and anyway, she just brought it huge to us. So that was one of those great days. 2nd of October, Harvest Festival, and as everyone has said, our staff team just took out all the stops, and it was a ball. I mean, Center Square was just full of people. 7th of October, I alluded to this earlier, Pumpkin People book. The town of Kenfl has committed to provide all grade 3 students at KCA with a copy of the Pumpkin People book. And typically, prior to COVID, the author and illustrator actually joined me as part of the reading, but they have not with COVID. However, Spike was there and some other staff, and as I have learned in my tenure, you never compete with Spike or with a princess. So it was just one of those really great mornings. The Historical Society Classic Car Show and Shine, the town of Kentville sponsored one of the trophies, and I got to pick a car, and I'm going to tell you, she was a beaut. 1972 Oldsmobile Cutlass convertible. Oh man, she was just beautiful. And the owner said that if we ever needed it for a parade in Kentville, he was there for us. So I just want to put that out there. And he also has a Mustang, but I'm glad he brought the Oldsmobile that day. The Kentville Volunteer Fire Department held a dedication and renaming of the auditorium to the Harman Illsley Memorial Auditorium on the 16th of October. It was a closed event, and it was not publicized because the fire department knew that there was no way they could stop people from attending, and with their limits, they gave the family first dibs on spacing and that, and anyway, it was really beautiful, and it's just so nice to see Chief Illsley's name out front, and his family did a lot of work to have this honor bestowed on him. As I said, I attended the MIT REAP workshop in Halifax. It was a great workshop. I'm going to tell you, I didn't realize it was going to be as much work as it is, but it's invigorating. And we're talking about entrepreneurship in our region. And I have to say, sitting there with, there's 5 regions participating in this. And when I sit there and listen to what's happening here in the Valley, I'm so proud of how much we have going on and how much development there is and innovation happening here. The other thing is I have signed on for a FCM training on municipal buildings. It's a phase 1 course, 5 weeks long. It's part of the Green Municipal Fund, and I'm delinquent in my homework from last week, but I'm getting it done, and that is my report. So we move on to new business. And our first order of new business is the 2021-2022 nomination and election of our deputy mayor. Election of the deputy mayor in accordance with the Town of Kentville Council Policy, Meeting Policy G70. The deputy mayor, Kate Savage, was elected on November 30th, 2020 council meeting. The deputy mayor is appointed for a term of 1 year. This council meeting, although short of 1 year, it represents the end of term for Deputy Mayor Kate Savage. On behalf of council staff and the citizens of Kentville, Kate, I want to thank you for your dedicated and committed service to the town of Kentville and this council as our deputy mayor. Thank you. As detailed in Policy G70, to select a deputy mayor, the chair will call for nominations. If more than one council member is nominated, the selection shall be put to a vote by ballot. The CAO will act as teller. He will distribute slips of paper to all members, including the chair. The members will write their choice for deputy mayor. Council members not nominated may be selected during the voting process. The teller will collect the ballots, count them, ignoring any blank ballots, and the results by majority vote will be provided to the chair, who will announce the deputy mayor. The chair will then call for a motion to destroy the ballots. Is there a nomination for deputy mayor? Councillor Gerard.
I would nominate Deputy Mayor Savage.
Thank you. Councillor Savage, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
I'll nominate Councillor Andrew Zabian.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations for deputy mayor? Are there any further nominations for deputy mayor? Nominations are now closed. You may, however, write your choice on the ballot if the nomination has not been made. Teller, please distribute the ballots.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, please write out your selection. And Teller, can you please collect the ballots? And typically, it would be the CAO and the solicitor who go into the kitchen to count the ballots. Jennifer, if you would act as an impartial witness, please, on behalf of our solicitor, who's, I'm going to say, being a slacker at home.
Surely he's got a portable camera.
How are you feeling?
Every week's an improvement.
Okay,
So-
good, good. Climbing any ladders?
I'm hopeful that an X-ray later this week is gonna tell me I can start doing a little weight bearing.
Okay.
But, my experience thus far is if my right foot is down for the entire day, it looks a bit like a basketball at the end of the day.
Ooh. So is this the end of your hockey career as a coach for your son's team?
My son's not playing this year, but my daughter is.
Okay.
And I was on the ice for the first practice, so, and then a week ago, exactly a week ago, she sprained and potentially fractured her ankle playing at school.
Oh, no.
So she's on crutches now.
Oh, my
But
goodness.
she was home with me last week, so I had company, but she was back at ACA this morning.
Nice.
Just point of clarity, because I know councils do this differently. Is it just reporting back on the vote per candidate, or is it simply the majority?
Simply the majority.
So if that is the case, Kate Savage had the majority.
Excellent, thank you. So the deputy mayor for 2021-2022 to serve a one-year term is Councillor Kate Savage. So welcome, Deputy Mayor Savage. Thank you, council, for your consideration. I require a motion to direct the teller to destroy the ballots. Thank you. I've got Councillor Gerard and Councillor Huntley on that one. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we destroy the ballots. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. I didn't tell him that part yet.
Fiber.
Okay, our next piece of new business is our committees of council. So members of council are requested to review the committees of council and provide your top 3 committees and your top 3 alternate committees at the November CAC meeting of November the 8th. So there is a blank sheet in the package that Jennifer sent around to you, and if you put your name down on your top 3, and then the next 3 would be what you want to be an alternate, your top 3 for an alternate. So when these come back, the CAO and I will review them. Any that we only have a single applicant for a position, that person will automatically become the council member on that committee. However, if there are more than one council member who wishes to be on a committee, then we will have a vote, and as a member of council, you will also be provided with the opportunity to say why you think you should be on that committee, if you bring any specific skill or anything else that you would like to add. And some of these committees do have several personnel on them. For example, Water Commission, I am the chair of that, but we have 3 members on it. Source Water, there's only 1 person. CAO Selection, you can delete that one out of there. That was an ad hoc committee that doesn't have to go back there. And any that are all of council, it's just all of council. And you'll notice that it was called the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and that had Maxwell and Huntley on it. That committee no longer exists because it has now been, that one was disbanded after the plan was done, and now that we have a plan in place, it's now called the Inclusion and Access Committee. Are there any questions? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm just wondering why we're doing it this way. Previous experience for me has been that we would simply say whether we wanted to change committees or add a committee and then have a discussion and then have a vote if 2 or more wanted to do that. Our committees of council, the way we do it has been set back. Our policy has been set back. It's deferred. And so this would not be following our policy, as we don't really have a policy right now. So I'm just wondering why we're kind of going back to square one with this.
Councillor Maxwell, because there were issues with the way that it was done this time around. Typically in 2016, when we set these, each member of council provided their top 3. That information went to the CAO and the mayor, and they made a decision based on what people provided. And that was brought back to council, and then the first year, everyone looked at whether they wanted to stay on those committees and switched it up. In October of 2020, basically, we sat here in the room and we put our hand up and didn't put our hand up, and that didn't seem to work because there was some dissatisfaction with the way that it was done. So it's felt that this is a restart, and this way we can equally distribute the level of work and get everybody out there and doing stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes. Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Zabia.
Thank you. This is good. I'd like to be on some committees. I just think I look at some of them here, and I guess we'll discuss this at the November meeting. Some people have been on some of these committees for 5 years now, and I think to really take advantage as a councillor and to take on your role, it's nice if you kind of move around and try other committees and not kind of be stuck or married to one of them for 5 years. So I hope that there is change. And again, you said we're going to be able to vote on it. Yeah, okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Can we populate this electronically? We can. Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything further on that? So you've got your homework. We will bring it back on November the 8th or earlier if you have it ready to go. CAO, I think we have a couple of pieces of correspondence that came in.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I had 2 emails that had come in. One is from a Kyle Huff with regards to wanted 2 points in the public record. Had some concerns with regards to a councillor shouting at a session. The other is with regards to what they called the Edge property. Also had an email from John Smith, who had some questions with regards to the Edge property.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comments? Okay.
Okay. And this is from Sharon Kehoe. Wanted to know if anybody else had bid on the Edge property. And just seems to be a question. And is that the only one?
Yep.
That's the only question.
As that's operational, CAO, you'll deal with that?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. We have one member in our audience. You probably can't see him out there in Facebook land, but he has not requested to come up and make public comment. Although we do thank you for being here this evening, Stephen. So the council has 2 confidential land business matters which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into a closed session to discuss the agenda items. We will not be returning to Facebook Live for adjournment of this meeting. So if the motion is to move into a closed session to discuss the agenda items. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. And the time is 7:56. And if you need a biological break while we shut down Facebook and log off. Thank you.